all of you, and in particular, obviously, our presenter, Erin McCann, who's a family consultant at the Redwood Caregiver Resource Center. That center provides support and services to family caregivers, including caregiver support groups, training and education, consultation, counseling, and respite support. We look forward to your talk and feel free to ask as many questions as you'd like. You can put them in the chat. If you're really eager to have the question answered right away, say so, or lift your hand. We'll be keeping an eye out for you. So welcome, and Erin, it's all yours now.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the opportunity to come talk about family caregiving, and particularly what we offer at Redwood Caregiver Resource Center. As Jane said, my name's Erin. I am a family consultant, which is, I guess, kind of a fancy term that our agency uses, but a social worker is basically what I am. So by education, I'm a social worker. So I'm a family consultant with Redwood Caregiver Resource Center. We're a program that provides support and services to family caregivers. I'll talk more about our program later on in the presentation, but basically there's caregiver resource centers throughout the state of California. There's 11 caregiver resource centers. So every county in California is served by a caregiver resource center. We at Redwood serve 7 counties in Northern California. So our main office is in Santa Rosa. I'm located in Humboldt County. We also have another family consultant in Humboldt County. And so we serve mostly Humboldt and Del Norte counties with our services. So I'm going to share the PowerPoint and get started here. I'm going to keep it on this screen because that's easier for me. So, so I'll be talking today about supporting family caregivers. So, let's see. Objectives. I'm going to give a family caregiving snapshot. And these objectives don't cover everything I'll be talking about, but just as a general overview, just to give a family caregiving snapshot, what that looks like and who it is that's family caregiving. And then the health risks, caregiver health risks, challenges faced by family and formal caregivers. And then what work is being done to increase the positive health outcomes for family caregivers, and in particular, what we offer at Redwood Caregiver Resource Center in the way of supporting caregivers with the goal of increasing positive health outcomes for the caregiver themselves. I also wanted to say before I get too into it, there will be plenty of time for questions at the end, or like Jane said, if you really have a question that's urgent, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. But we should have plenty of time. I'm happy to answer questions. I also wanted to let you all know I'm one of the people, as many of you are probably, that have had this sickness for the last couple of weeks with a lingering cough. So I'm going to do my best to get through it. I have water and cough drops here, but yeah, hopefully I don't get a cough attack, but just letting you all know, hope all of you are healthy.
That was like the Humboldt crud.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we all know about that. So family caregiving snapshot. Approximately 1 in 5 households in the United States is engaged in a family caregiving situation. There's 44 million adults. Probably an old estimate now, but 44 million adults who are providing unpaid assistance to older adults and adults with disabilities. Family caregivers are diverse in age, race, ethnicity, gender, employment status, income. Although one of the facts that we talk about is that women are more affected by family caregiving. So women make up 2/3 of the family caregivers in the United States, and they also report higher levels of depression, anxiety, lower levels of positive health, well-being, life satisfaction than male caregivers. So definitely female caregivers more affected. For a long time, caregivers have been relatively invisible in the healthcare system and in their communities. So they're not often looked at as part of the healthcare team necessarily. One of our director often says family caregivers are often looked at as pieces of durable medical equipment, and not necessarily as humans. So, doctors just have a lot of assumptions about what family caregivers are willing to do, capable of doing, like, oh, you're safe to be at home because you have your family member there, your wife lives there with you. When in fact, they're not really, including the family caregiver as an important piece of that, that relationship and that, healthcare system. And of course, caregivers often have worse health status indicators than the person they're caring for. So we've all heard the stories of family caregiver passing away before the loved one that they're caring for, or family caregiver being in worse health in the long run than the person that they're caring for. Health status indicators in particular are the things that kind of predict someone's health long term. So maybe they're not necessarily in worse health now, but the health status indicators would predict that long term the caregiver is going to have worse health outcomes than the care receiver. And we'll talk a little bit more about what family caregiving means, but basically, yeah, when we talk about family caregiving, obviously family is such a broad term. So it could be a family member by blood, it could be a family member by choice, it could be a neighbor or a friend, basically anyone that's providing that kind of informal, unpaid assistance. And we distinguish the family caregivers from like paid professional caregivers, or like IHSS caregivers sometimes, because the dynamics are different when you're caring for a family member. You have a lot of more emotional attachment, sometimes more grief. Not to say that informal caregivers don't develop that bond with their person that they're caring for, but when it's a family member and you have all that history and all the family dynamics that go with it, the role differential, the transitions that happen, there are definitely just more considerations when we think about family caregiving than even in professional caregivers, paid caregivers. As far as caregiver health, kind of reiterating the fact that chronic illness and disability affects the whole family system. So it's not just the person that has the illness or has the disease. It's, it's obviously affecting the family system, the family caregivers that are involved. Many caregivers continue to provide intense care to others while suffering from poor health themselves. And so, this all leads to caregivers having an increased risk of heart disease. And the other thing is that caregivers are less likely to engage in preventative health behaviors. So one of the facts, going along with women's health and women caregivers, they're less likely to get their mammograms on time or regularly. They're less likely to have those testing or to even see the doctor. A lot of times I'll ask the family caregiver, how many medical appointments did your loved one have in the past 6 months? And sometimes it's, 6, sometimes it's 20. And then you ask, how many medical appointments did you have in the past 6 months? And oftentimes it's 0. And maybe that's a good thing, because they're not having any issues. But it is recommended, obviously for preventative health that you go once a year, once every 6 months, and caregivers are less likely to do those preventative health measures and less likely to address the health issues that they do have because they're prioritizing the care for their loved one. So again, caregivers often have those worse health status indicators. And then we talk about caregiver mental health. It's kind of the same trends. Family caregivers show higher levels of depression. Caregivers suffering depression are more likely to have coexisting anxiety disorders, substance abuse or dependence, and chronic disease. Caregivers report higher levels of stress and describe feeling frustrated, angry, drained, guilty, or helpless as a result of providing the care. As we see sometimes too, stressful caregiving situations can lead to harmful behaviors for both the care receiver and the caregiver or other family members involved. And most caregivers, as we see, are providing the care with little or no support, either no family support or informal support outside of themselves. They carry that burden mostly alone. And then there's additional considerations as far as rural challenges in Humboldt and Del Norte County. Of course, we know about that. There's sometimes isolation, access, challenges with access to services. We are fortunate to have quite a few resources in Humboldt County, actually, for seniors, for caregivers, for loved ones with dementia. But there's transportation challenges, all of those kind of rural challenges that we see. And then the other consideration is that 60% of family caregivers are working in addition to the caregiving. So they're working outside the home, or they're working, working from home, but they're having employment, on top of the caregiving. And that's because of financial considerations or financial burden. And just overall caregivers are being asked to shoulder greater burden, such as financial responsibilities and complex medical tasks. So I have a lot of caregivers talking to me about, the complex medical tasks that they're performing in the home that would normally be tasks that you would consider a nurse would need to perform, catheterizations or tube feedings, things like that. And family caregivers, often spouses who are older adults themselves, are being asked to take care of those kind of complex medical issues. And sometimes caregivers are like, I guess I'm a trained nurse now. I didn't realize, I never wanted to be a nurse, but now I'm basically a registered nurse. But yeah, just being asked to carry some of those complex tasks. And I'll just add to all of these, all of this came out of some research that was done in the 80s by the state of California. So there was some research done, or by a group that presented it to the state of California, research done about family caregiving and how we were going to be addressing it. And so they did all this research to find, kind of what the issues were that family caregivers were facing. And so they found that, all of these things, that family caregivers were often in worse health and had worse health status indicators. They were at risk for mental health issues. And it kind of spurred and prompted the creation of these caregiver resource centers to help address some of these issues and increase those health outcomes. I'm going to take a break from the PowerPoint for a second because I wanted to share a couple of fact sheets that we have. So one of the things we have in our program is a lot of fact sheets, which sometimes I feel like I'm overwhelming people with a lot of reading, but these ones aren't too much reading. And I just wanted to share, it gives an overview of kind of some of the things that caregivers are dealing with. So let me pull this one up. So this is a fact sheet that we have, and it's just, feelings often expressed by caregivers and care receivers. So those are the terms we used: a family caregiver, and the person that they're caring for is the care receiver. Sometimes it's referred to as a care partner. The language kind of matters too, but we refer as a care receiver. So I'll zoom in too, but I just wanted to put the fact sheet up here like this because as you can see, the caregiver list is longer. That's kind of one thing I like to point out. So, caregivers are experiencing a lot of emotions as they go through this process of caregiving, as they receive the diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's or other chronic illness in their loved one. They experience all these emotions. Care receivers are experiencing those emotions as well. Of course, there's a lot of grief as a care receiver when you hear of your diagnosis and your disease and the changes that brings. But so one of the main things I like to point out about this one is that the caregiver is actually, the list is longer. So sometimes they're experiencing even more emotional conflict and challenge and just a lot of drain. And then I'll zoom in we can kind of look more. And so sometimes I'll give this fact sheet to people just to kind of validate the emotions that they are feeling. So as a family caregiver, sometimes we don't even realize we are a family caregiver. Sometimes we don't realize everything that we're carrying, both emotionally and physically, and just, the workload. We don't realize all of that we're carrying. And so sometimes it's eye-opening to see like, oh, I am experiencing anger. I am experiencing this guilt or this guilt resentment cycle that we go through. I am experiencing grief and loss. One of the topics that we talk a lot about with caregivers is ambiguous loss. So it's loss or grief that is unclear because the person is here, but they're not here. So they're here physically and gone psychologically. And that's complicated for us to navigate. And it's ongoing and it happens over time. And there's no clear, it's just not clear cut. And so that can be really complicated and really emotionally draining. There's these feelings of helplessness or shame or worry. There's fear of your own future, fear of, your own health, outcomes. And so the caregiver, really is experiencing a lot of these really challenging emotions. And then the other, let's see, I'm gonna zoom out again. Oh. I'm gonna go back here. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna share one more fact sheet that we have as well. And it's gonna be this one. So we're just kind of, again, kind of setting the stage about why caregivers need help and what kind of the experience of a family caregiver is. I'm sure it's not news to you all, but one of this fact sheet or one of the things that we talk about with our caregivers in like a consultation or an assessment would be when to know that you need more help. And so again, sometimes caregivers, especially if it's a spouse, we just kind of take it on ourselves as a responsibility to care for our loved one. Or if it's our parents, like it's our responsibility. We just step in and we just do it and we care for them. And we don't always realize when it has become too much for us or when it is starting to take a toll on us. And we can fall into some of those, danger areas, problem areas where it affects our health or mental health. There could be, risk of harmful behaviors, risk to our loved one. And so this is kind of a fact sheet that gives us an idea of what to look for as far as, when we might need more help. Because again, caregivers like to take it on themselves and think that we can do it all. And we don't like to be a burden to other people. So it's hard to ask for help. So one of the ones on here that I think is important to point out is this last one, actually. So when there are no more happy times, loving and caring have given way to exhaustion and resentment, and you no longer feel good about yourself or take pride in what you're doing. So that just kind of being a signal that maybe it's time to get more help or ask for help. Feeling isolated, feeling like your other relationships are breaking down. So relationships with friends or other family members. Obviously, when you're in a caregiving situation, those things change, and there's, changes that come, and there's grief that comes with that. But these are kind of danger signals that, if they're really breaking down and you're starting to feel isolated, feeling like you're in a no-win situation, that's really common. Or feeling like no matter what you do, it isn't enough. And so I want to point out too, it's one thing to recognize when you're having these danger signals or when you're feeling burnt out. And then, the other side of that is, okay, I know I need help. Now, how do I get it? How do I get the help? Where is the help that's available? What help do I even need? And how do I, kind of navigate this? And that's where we can come in. We really try to help caregivers before they reach their breaking point, before they reach burnout, to get the support, get some, community care resources or emotional support or whatever it might be that can help you navigate this and basically just make it more sustainable for the long term. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint. That might actually be a good place to stop and take a break if people have questions about kind of that first part of the presentation, kind of setting the stage for what caregivers are, what they do, and kind of what family caregiving looks like in our community. Does anyone have questions about that part?
I had one right off the bat. Is this support publicly funded? In other words, if we call and say help, what happens?
Yeah, great question. Yes, so our program is funded by Title III of the 3E of the Older Americans Act through federal funds. And we do that through contracts with the Area 1 Agency on Aging. And then we are also funded by the state of California. So right now we're under the umbrella of California Department of Aging. And so we get most of our funding through programs through the Department of Aging through the state of California. So yes, we're publicly funded, and our services are free to people who qualify, which is basically family caregivers. And I'll go over the eligibility in a minute, but it's kind of confusing anyways. But if you're caring for a loved one who's an older adult or who has any type of neurocognitive illness, you would qualify for our program. So you would call in and you would immediately get set up with a family consultant to do an intake and assessment. And then you should be eligible for all of our services from there. So support groups, respite grants, all of that. We are always asking for donations, of course, to our program. So we can be partially funded by private donations as well. But and then some of our respite grants have a copay that could be asked of you based on income, but it's not mandatory, and it's not always the case.
So you can walk us through this process of exactly, how this works. In other words, we call you, you set up an appointment with a consultant, and then you fill out an application of some sort, or how's it work?
Yeah, most of it is done. So like for the respite grant, so basically once you call and get an intake or an assessment, which is all done over the phone, unless you prefer in person, we're happy to meet in person as well. I do meet with caregivers at the offices at Area 1 Agency on Aging. Most of the time I'm working remotely from home, but I can meet with people at Area 1 Agency on Aging. we do support groups at Humboldt Senior Resource Center. Sometimes I'll meet with participants or caregivers at a community location like Timber Ridge Assisted Living. They'll let us use their private dining room, so we can meet in person, but a lot of it is done either on the phone or on Zoom, and it's just a lot of questions. So we'll just ask you a lot of questions about how you're doing, what type of care you're giving to your loved one, what type of support you might need. And then from there, you're welcome to come to any of our trainings. So you'll be on our email list to come to any of our trainings or education workshops. And you can just register, and they're all free. As far as a respite grant, if you're granted a respite grant, which as long as we have the funding and you're a participant, you're, a caregiver, you'll get a respite grant. There's just a couple forms to sign. There's not like an extensive application or anything like that. And then from there, you're welcome to come to our support groups, or to call into your family consultant, basically anytime you want to set up another consultation, or just have questions about a change in your caregiving situation, or now, you're thinking about skilled nursing facility or long-term out-of-home care placement. Set up an appointment with our family consultant, and talk about options, or, just get emotional support. We can do all of that. So, yeah, that was kind of an exhaustive answer for that question, but
Complicated question when you look at the reality of it. For example, right now we're scheduled to talk to the palliative team at St. Joe's, and the issue is what decisions do you want to make given certain situations? What possibilities, what facilities are available if need be? What choices do you have? There's, and I don't know, that's part of St. Joe's, but I presume that's not tied in with you all.
It's not tied in, and that, that could be a really great resource, for you to kind of look at all those options. I mean, we partner with a lot of other community organizations to refer, make appropriate referrals to other organizations, and we work together too. It's possible you could, be a part of palliative care with Providence and get our services as well. The unique thing is that so a lot of services there, the actual patient is going to be your care receiver. So of course, a lot of them will meet with the family or have those family considerations, but the patient is the care receiver. For our program, we don't ever have to even meet the care receiver or talk to them. It's all just for the caregiver themselves. And so sometimes that's helpful to have those conversations, not with your care receiver, not in their presence or something, and have a third party to kind of just talk about the caregiver issues that maybe you can't bring up in the other settings. But yeah, so you're welcome to access our services as well, for whatever type of support you need.
What kinds of training do you give?
Yeah. And we'll talk about that in the second half of this. Okay. I'll talk more about what we do, and I'll bring up some, our support group lists, and I can even include I can bring up maybe some flyers for some of the trainings that we do too, but I'll definitely talk more about those trainings. As I dive into our program a little bit more.
Do you have a survey kind of form where people can go through and say, okay, I'm skipping my doctor's appointments, I'm postponing them, I'm not taking my normal vitamins, I'm not doing the physical activities that I did? I mean, the whole sets of things. Do you do that kind of analysis?
We do, yeah. We do that as part of our assessment. So that would mostly be done with a family consultant. Like, we would be asking those questions. But one of the things I'll talk about too is that we do have a new system of like an online portal where caregivers can actually go and start their own account through a caregiver resource center to get connected with us. So you can do a lot of that online on your own, and then get connected with a family consultant, and which is and also just get, start getting emails and access to trainings and online information that is specific to your situation. So if you want to go and start an online account, they'll ask a bunch of, kind of intake questions and then cater the information they give you to your situation. So there's, a couple different ways you can get connected. And I'll have the link for where you can start. It's called Care Navigator, and you can start your account on that website, that portal, the online portal, by starting an account. I'll put the link up.
Yeah, if you could put that in the chat, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. Yeah. Lynn, you have a question and you're muted.
So what is your phone number and the actual physical location of your office in Santa Rosa?
Yeah. The main phone number for the Santa Rosa office, which is also where you can get to the extensions for me and Jenna, for all the family consultants, that phone number is 707-542-0282. And I'll put that up on a slide at the end as well. And then that physical office is located in Santa Rosa on Sonoma Avenue, in Santa Rosa. And, but most of our family consultants, so we have, I think, 5 or 6 family consultants now. Most of us are working remotely, either in the county that we're serving, or, we're kind of all helping each other out. But
So is there somebody that lives here in Humboldt County that actually does this, or you actually have to go through your Santa Rosa office, or you're online?
yeah, it's been a little bit of a challenge here in Humboldt. So I do live in Humboldt County. I live in McKinleyville, and I've been here for this whole time that I've worked at Redwood. My physical office used to be at the Humboldt Senior Resource Center, but we were just kind of renting space from them. As they grew, they didn't have the space for us anymore. I hate to say that. They didn't kick us out or anything, but it was a good thing. They were growing. And then, the pandemic and everything too. So we don't have a physical office in Humboldt County, but we do have 2 family consultants, myself and Jenna, who are both located in Humboldt County.
How often do you go to the Area 1 and the Agency on Aging in Eureka? How often are you guys over there? I know you told me one other time when I talked to you at Timber Ridge, but I kind of went over my head.
Yeah, that's okay. I had been using an office at Area 1 Agency on Aging once a week. So I was there every Thursday. That's kind of not happening anymore. So it's kind of by appointment is what we say now. We're not there on a regular basis.
Okay, so you don't go there Thursdays anymore. On appointment only?
Not every Thursday, but if there's, a need for an appointment on a Thursday, then we can make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, can you meet in the dining room? I mean, they make space available if you have somebody who wants to meet with you.
Yeah. I have connections with, we have a really good relationship with Area 1 Agency on Aging. So I'll meet in the conference room or in one of the offices for someone that's working remotely that day. And then I also have contact with the Humboldt Senior Resource Center to utilize their spaces as needed.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
How many clients do you tend to have at a particular time?
How many clients?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. There's not necessarily, we have what's called now I can't think of the word. It's like a revolving client load. So it's you're a rolling client load, something like that. It's not a static caseload. So we have a lot of caregivers that we serve, but we don't necessarily have a requirement of checking in with them every month. Once we get the assessment and the initial services set up, it's kind of on the caregiver to choose, to self-select into our support groups, into our trainings, or reaching out for services by calling the family consultant. So, so yeah, we have hundreds of caregivers that we serve, but not necessarily all at once.
Do you do evaluation of the services and do you follow up with them to see how well it's working for them?
Yeah, we do. We have a requirement to follow up 6 months after the initial assessment. And then typically after that, it's either we could do another 6-month reassessment, but typically after that, it's again, the caregiver calling in themselves. But we also send out I think quarterly surveys to each of our participants about their current needs or how well they're being supported by our program.
So how many total participants do you think you actually have that are active?
For Humboldt and Del Norte County, I would say probably close to 500.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how long has this program been going on?
It's so the Caregiver Resource Centers have been they were created in 1987. So there's actually been a Caregiver Resource Center. Redwood Caregiver Resource Center has been around since 1987. We have gone off and on with having a physical presence in Humboldt County because of funding issues. So our funding gets cut, more publicly funding, so that, we all know how that goes. But so we've had a family consultant in Humboldt County since 2016. So almost 8 years now.
Mm-hmm. So you're kept busy.
Yes.
That's a good thing.
And a lot of it is outreach, so just, getting the word out there that we are here and that we are supporting family caregivers, because it is kind of just such a unique niche of a population to serve. And so really, getting the word out to our community partners, the hospitals or medical clinics or the county, different agencies there, getting the word out that we're here and they can make referrals to us. And but yes, there's a lot of caregivers that need support.
How do you provide respite? How do you arrange respite time for the caregiver?
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that, and who funds it?
Yeah, so our respite grants are funded again through the same funding sources that we get for our program. And depending on our funding for the year, they can range kind of from $1,000 to $5,000, again, depending on our funding. And so once you become a client, which is basically just getting an intake, getting connected with our program, we'll talk about respite and it's likely you'll qualify for a grant. We can do that either through agencies that we contract with. So we contract with Visiting Angels, Elite Caregivers, Agape Home Care, and we also contract with the adult day health centers locally. And so we can pay for care through those agencies, and the caregiver gets to choose what shifts they work directly with the agency to set up care. The other option is that they can hire their own caregiver. So it can be kind of a private hire agreement that could be a family member or a friend or a neighbor or somebody like that. And then they work out kind of a work contract between them, and we would reimburse the family caregiver, that's our client, reimburse them for those hours worked, and so that they can find respite through that way too.
Do you have to approve those agreements with a friend or neighbor or something like that?
No, we don't approve. It's something, there's a couple extra forms that the caregiver signs that's kind of accepting, responsibility for that kind of work relationship. And then we don't get involved with that.
Okay. So you don't have any liability for it.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
Definitely. So
Lynn.
So are you aware that the Alzheimer's Association does a one-time $1,000 respite grant?
Yes, I have had several caregivers who have received that, and we're always, yes, and I've referred some people to that as well. So especially if our grant runs out or we don't have the funding, because it can go quickly. We're always looking for additional ways that they can get respite. So sometimes I'll refer them to the Alzheimer's Association. There's also a couple of grants through, like if they're a veteran, Elizabeth Dole Foundation and things like that. But yes.
So my other question would be, so if you have a family member that, has dementia and you're doing private hires, can you get reimbursed for part of that care?
Yep. Yeah, we can make that work.
Okay.
Thanks. And then, yeah, there's a question about, so I did post the, I did copy the link in the chat to the, to start an account, with our online portal. So if you are a family caregiver or you know a family caregiver, you can start there with that link, and create an account through us. And then that'll prompt, a follow-up from a family consultant, and also prompt, like I said, a lot of online resources that can be made available to you. And then Karen also said, is it possible to get a copy of the fact sheets? And I'm wondering if there's a way, Marina or Jane to email out materials that I could send you guys.
You can coordinate that through Marina, I do believe. You could send those copies, email them to Marina, email them to OLLI and Marina together, but then they have the list of who was here and they could potentially do that. And anybody who's here can then ask OLLI to please send it, or they could contact you directly.
Right. You can contact me directly and I'm happy to send them. I will work on, maybe towards the end of the presentation, I'll work on attaching them to the chat. If that would work as well. That could be a way I can just insert them. Yeah, insert them as a file into the chat. I'll try to do that.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and continue. A lot of the stuff, that I have may have already been answered as well, but I'll just continue and finish what I have here, and then we can continue the questions and session. So again, as part of, as I mentioned, there was a lot of research done back in the 80s about family caregiving and the needs of family caregivers. And other part of that research was, okay, how do we address that? How do we address those challenges? And how do we increase the positive health outcomes for caregivers? And so what they found as part of their research as well was that these are the main interventions that were most helpful for family caregivers at that time. So having a comprehensive assessment, which is what I've talked about, where we're asking, questions about what the caregiver, what type of care the caregiver is providing, health questions about the care receiver, but then also, health questions about the caregiver. When was the last time they saw the doctor? How is their mental health? What types of things, what type of family support do they have? And what their history is. What are the responsibilities that they have outside of caregiving? So some of them have young children they're caring for. Some of them have children in college they're supporting financially. Some of them have full-time jobs. What are those responsibilities outside of caregiving that are affecting their stress and their caregiving as well? So those are the things we talk about in the assessment, and that was shown to be helpful. And then from the assessment, we developed a care plan. So having a care plan about goals for the caregiver, and that's part of the 6-month check-in. 6 months ago, we talked about these things. How have you been able to see the doctor in the last 6 months, as we discussed? Were you able to get into therapy? Were you able to access the respite grant and get a break from caregiving? And then the other intervention that was helpful was the education. So education, training, and support. Of course, respite. So respite means relief. So providing some sort of relief for the caregiver to get a break from the caregiving responsibilities. Of course, financial support was shown to be helpful for caregivers. And then the primary care intervention. So again, having the caregiver, the family caregiver themselves prioritize their own medical appointments, their preventative testing, and follow up with some of those, their own health care. So those were shown to increase positive health outcomes. That is where the Caregiver Resource Centers were born. So the state of California funded a statewide system of 11 CRCs. And then we have a partnership with the Area Agency on Aging, again, through the Older Americans Act, to fund us additionally as well. So the eligibility is family caregivers of adults with neurocognitive disease that occurred after the age of 18. So this could include things like traumatic brain injury, stroke, any type of dementia, Parkinson's, other types of brain disease injuries. Or it could be someone who doesn't necessarily have a cognitive disease, but is 60 or older and needing help with activities of daily living. So those are kind of two different populations we can serve. A lot of times there's overlap with those, of course. And again, family being a very general, broad term, does not have to be biological family. So informal caregivers, caring for someone with a neurocognitive disease that occurred after the age of 18. And so the after the age of 18 kind of distinguishes us from the regional center. So Redwood Coast Regional Center serves families with a neurocognitive disease that occurred before the age of 18. And so we don't overlap with the regional center.
So I presume that means you don't deal with kids that became autistic early.
Right, exactly, which is a huge need, of course, now. And we have had a lot of caregivers that have reached out for our services. And of course, we'll still provide, counseling and things like that. But really, in theory, the regional center is the better source of services for those families. Okay, so then our services, again, caregiver trainings, events, support groups, information, education, comprehensive assessment care plan, respite, and then we can also provide 6 sessions of counseling. So we can pay for 6 sessions of counseling with a contracted counselor with a focus on caregiving issues, or caregiving, grief and loss associated with the caregiving. So that's another service that we can offer as well. Services are offered in person, as I said, on Zoom or via telephone. And then additional services, we have, again, the ongoing consultation. So our family consultant is always available to set up a consultation or talk with you over the phone. And then we have our Care Navigator online account system. So you can interact with our resources through that online portal as well. Another note is that we do have Spanish speaking family consultants available. They're not located in Humboldt County, but they serve all of our counties. So they help us when we have Spanish speaking caregivers. We also have translation service available for any other language. We have a family consultant that speaks Tagalog as well. So we can serve people whose first language is not English. And then we have lots of fact sheets and resources available in several languages as well. So most of our fact sheets and trainings have been translated or are delivered in several different languages. And so then with that, I will pull up our caregiver support group list that we have currently for Humboldt County. I think I have it. Yeah. Let's see, there we go. So our current list of caregiver support groups for Humboldt County, I facilitate the Wednesday group, which is on Zoom online. It's the first and third Wednesday of the month. And so that's on Zoom for Humboldt County caregivers. Then we also have an in-person support group on Thursdays, first and it's actually the second and fourth Thursdays. We need to update that. But it's at the Humboldt Senior Resource Center in Eureka. And then our walk and talk group is on break for winter right now, but this is something that Jenna, our other family consultant, is going to be starting back up for spring and summer. So we'll have those dates to be announced. I really like that group. We meet at various locations in Humboldt County, mostly Sequoia Park. Someone mentioned that earlier. Sequoia Park and the Marsh are our kind of favorite locations to do that. And we'll just go for a walk and support each other and talk about caregiving issues. And then we also have this online support group for in Spanish for Spanish speaking caregivers, which is facilitated by one of our family consultants who is awesome. So those are our support groups. And then as far as trainings that we have, I'm happy to share flyers for the trainings that we have with anybody who's interested, but just a quick description of some of the trainings we have. I recently facilitated a training on ambiguous loss. So it was based on a book by Pauline Boss called Loving Someone with Dementia. So it was about grief and loss and the ambiguous loss and the journey of care that we experience on caregiving. We do a lot of trainings. We have a training called Caregiver 101. We have a training called Communication, Understanding Dementia, Communication Strategies. So those are really popular trainings. So communication strategies with a loved one with dementia, and also managing challenging behaviors with a loved one with dementia. We do sometimes mindfulness or stress relieving trainings. We have a training called Stress Busters. There's a training called Powerful Tools for Caregivers. So kind of just equipping caregivers to feel more empowered in their role, and it's just a good space to develop community with other caregivers as well. So we also have a training that we do sometimes called Managing Frustration for Caregivers. We used to call it Anger Management for Caregivers, but we decided to change that because it's kind of has a stigma attached to that, but it's managing frustration. But we hear that from caregivers a lot, just the feelings of frustration that they experience. So we also have access to a statewide list of trainings that all of our sister agencies, sister caregiver resource centers, are doing online. So all of those are online, but they're available free for our caregivers. And those range in topics from, long-term care planning, placement options, legal and financial considerations, or advanced care planning documents. We have some that are led by attorneys. Some that are just based on kind of self-care and managing stress or meditation, lots of different ones. So those are all available to you as well. And then I'll just go ahead and pull up the last slide that I had here. Oh, I guess I had, there we go. That has our contact information. So you're welcome to call us or to refer to our program, to refer, friends and family to our program, anyone you might know that could utilize our services. We do have a formal referral form as well if you want to fill that out, but anybody is welcome to self-refer and call into our program, or like I said, start an account on Care Navigator, the online portal. Okay, so there we go. That's all I have to say. We have some time for more questions or discussion if anyone has other things. Any other questions? Yeah, Lynn, go ahead. Oh, and you're on mute, Lynn.
Right. So do you have any resources that can help people with legal issues? Like I have a friend whose father has dementia, and he is the trustee of their trust, and they're trying to get his name removed, and they're running into all kinds of complications. They need, it's called a declaration of competency, I think the form is, but their primary caregiver is a physician's assistant who, under the new state law, doesn't have a regular physician overseeing her. So they have nobody to sign this form.
Right. Yes, I actually know exactly what you're talking, like the case that you're talking about. I was just talking to Jenna about that specific scenario today, but yes, so we can provide some basic consultation around legal issues, just based on our own expertise and knowledge. We have fact sheets on legal issues. But one of the services that we do provide is also a legal consultation. So we can pay for an hour of legal consultation with an attorney. Most attorneys, I'll say too, will do a free hour of consultation. And so that's the estate planning attorneys. And it sounds like if they have a trust, they probably already have an attorney anyways. So the attorney is probably the best person to talk to about that. But we do have what?
They've talked to the attorney. This is what they have to do. They can't find anybody to sign that form that knows the gentleman, because the primary caregiver is a physician's assistant and legally she can't sign it. And there's no physician overseeing her anymore because the state changed the rules and now she has enough training or whatever. She doesn't need of overseeing physician. And they tried contacting Mad River Hospital and they said they don't have anybody that can do that. So they're kind of at their wits' end as to where to go to get a legally acceptable person to sign this document.
Right. It seems crazy. I mean, if if the rule is that the physician's assistant doesn't have to have an overseeing doctor, medical provider, medical doctor, that then they would need to change the rule for signing the form too, that it wouldn't have to be a medical doctor. It could be a physician's assistant to sign that form. But yeah, so we can talk to them. We can try to, problem solve that. One of the recommendations that I might give is like a referral to a neurologist, because I know neurologists would be able to sign that declaration. I don't know if that person's already seeing a neurologist or if they can just get a referral to a neurologist from their physician's assistant. And also Dr. Levine, the neuropsychologist in Arcata, could also be an option for seeing them. He's not a medical doctor, but he does work with.
We're very familiar with Dr. Levine. We refer people back and forth between the Alzheimer's Association and him.
Yeah, that's tough.
So point being, make sure you have your legal ducks lined up in a row before somebody gets to the point where they're not considered legally cognitive enough to sign documents.
Yeah, and how do you determine that?
You just plan ahead. I mean, you never know.
Sure.
So,
Sure, I know.
You need to have something in place just in case. And then, you'll get it all in place and then the government will change the rules.
Right.
Makes it frustrating. That's one of the frustrations that you deal with. And it's major. Are there any other questions? This has been great. I'm so glad you have this service available, and I had not heard about it before. So it's a revelation to those of us who are doing this caregiving, and that's very helpful. So we're glad this is going to be available to you. Strokes happen quickly. Yeah, plan ahead. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Well, I knew about this program. I was referred to by the Area 1 on agency, so they let me know about Erin and the program.
Now, have you taken advantage of that knowledge?
Well, Erin and I discussed it last time. I saw her over at Timber Ridge in McKinleyville, and then there came something else that we needed to discuss, and I was wondering when would be the next time would be available for me to talk to you about that.
Yeah. You can reach out via email or phone. I will say that I'm actually working fewer hours than I used to. So I am not as available, but if I'm not available to do it, I will connect you with Jenna, who is our other family consultant, and she can definitely follow up. But you can definitely reach out to me via email or phone, and I'll follow up with you.
Okay, thank you. By the way, Mom turned 94 this month.
Wow. Wow.
And she's got only, from what I'm gathering, what her problems are is congestive heart failure, AFib, and then now she kind of fell on her foot and sprained her ankle, so she's kind of in pretty bad shape.
Oh, yeah, that's tough. I hope she can recover.
Something happens to all of us at one point. We just don't know what and when. That's the tough part.
I know.
And-
But I've
Yep.
got a caregiver that comes 3 times a week, so I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad off on that.
It's people who try to do it without assistance or respite, I think, that get in the worst trouble because it's very hard, or who are working and then trying to pull this off.
Well,
Or
most
who
of
are definitely
most of
ill
her
themselves.
care, most of her care is through her long-term contract with the people she worked for, and I think that was CalPERS. They got it for her, so she's got a cap, but hopefully there's more discussion about will she outlive her money
cap.
more than her care.
Yeah. Well, anybody else have any questions or comments or suggestions or what have you? If not, I want to thank you very, very much for Erin for the work you do, and it's greatly needed. I'm appreciative to know it's available and probably will contact you myself. Want to let you know that next Monday on April 29th, we're coming to the end of April, I don't believe it. We're having an interesting discussion by Ross Beveridge on reflections on artificial intelligence. He worked in the industry for some 40 odd years and helped create it. And he is retired here in McKinleyville. And he's agreed to present on this topic to let us know how that's how we're engaging with it right now and what the challenges are and what to anticipate. So feel free to come again next Monday. We look forward to seeing you all. And thank you for joining OLLI and being a part of this program. Have
Thanks
a
so
great
much.
day. It's beautiful out. Go out and enjoy it.
Good time to walk on the Mad River Bluffs.
Right. Or the Arcata Community Forest. Or the marsh. You just have to find some time. That ends up being the problem.
Exactly.
Go to the Native Plant Society.
Huh.
Is that all done? Godwood Days is done, right, Karen?
Godwood Days is done yesterday, and the Wildflowers Show will begin on Friday, March 3rd, and on Saturday and Sunday
March?
it will continue. No, May. I'm sorry, May 3rd.
March by.
And then the Wildflower Show and the wildflower plant sale will continue both Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And I'm tired. I was putting plants in my car to take over to the nursery. And
She's
all
been
the
wearing
nursery-
herself out. She's been
Yes,
wearing herself
yes.
out on behalf of the Native Plant Society. Just ask her. It's like, how many hundreds of plants did you take? Hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah, so far I've only taken 3 flats, but I've got 4 loaded into the car, and I need to take about 6 more flats, and they're each 16. And this is this time. I've taken things before. And those are not even the ones that we're already propagating at the nursery itself. Plus, we have 5 nurseries that will be supplying us with more plants. So this one could, even though it was so cold and the poor little plants couldn't grow big and all be blooming right now, it's going to be a very good sale. Every time it just gets better.
A little extra promo on behalf of the Native Plant Society. Thank you very much, Karen.
I have a question for you, Jane. Do you know what was happening over here at Pearson Park here this weekend? I saw a lot of tents and stuff out there. Any idea what that was?
No. Well, it's Earth Day.
That's right.
That's today.
That's the date, but there were like Eureka Natural Foods had a celebration day on Saturday, and I don't know what other events have been going on.
Yeah, I saw some tents over at Pearson Park, and I was just wondering what that was all about. And that was this weekend, so I guess they were
Yeah.
probably celebrating Earth Day as well.
Starting in advance over the weekend because they have to work on Mondays. You know how it works. Thanks so much.
Thank you,
And
Jane.
we appreciate your participation. Look forward to seeing you next week as well.
Thank you, dear Jane.
You're most welcome. Happy to have you here.